Hi everyone, this is Sarian, and today I'm going to talk to you about WH questions. Let's take a look at them. First of all, what are WH words? Can you guess some of them? Who, what, when, why, how often, how many? These are some ways you can start WH questions. Now let's look at sentence structure and syntax. Eduardo Briseño is a researcher. Our sentence begins with a subject, followed by a verb, and followed by a complement or complete idea and a period. This is sentence structure. Syntax is word order, so we need subject, verb, complete idea. In a question, we see a different syntax. Why is Eduardo Briseño a researcher? Notice here, the subject moves. The verb comes before the subject now. And all of this happens after the WH word. So it's really important to remember that syntax changes when we use the verb be. From sentence to question, the sentence structure and the syntax changes. Now let's look at WH question formation with all other verbs. Demosthenes spends time in both zones, the learning zone and the performance zone. Again, we begin with a subject, followed by a verb, and followed by a complete idea. Let's look at the question now, where we need do support in the question when the verb is not be. Demosthenes spent his time. So here we need the do support does, since Demosthenes is third person singular. Where does Demosthenes spend his time? Notice that we have a WH word, we have do support, and then we still have subject, verb, complete idea, syntax. So the syntax stays the same with the exception of including the WH word and the do support before the SVO. Notice that the verb in the first sentence has an S to show that the subject is he, she, or it. In the second phrase, the question, there is no S at the end of spend. That's because the S is in the do support. How do we know when to use does or do? Let's look at these two questions. How often do you spend time in both the learning zone and in the performance zone? And what does Beyonce minimize during the performance zone? When our subjects in our question are I, you, we, they, the form of do that we need is do. When our subject is he, she, it, we need to use does. If we're asking a question about the past, we can use did for all subjects. So in this question, we're using do because the subject is you. In this second question, we use does because Beyonce is like she. Beyonce is third person singular. In conclusion, syntax changes in questions where we use the verb be. In the sentence, we have SVO, or subject verb complete idea. SVO, O stands for object. That's the syntax for sentences. For questions, there's a switch. We use a WH word, but the subject and the verb change positions. When we ask questions with verbs other than the verb be, the syntax stays the same. In sentences, we have SVO, or subject verb complete idea order. In questions, it's very similar. We begin with a WH word, we include do, does, or did, and we continue with SVO order. I hope this was helpful. I'm looking forward to reading your questions, hearing your questions, and watching videos of you asking each other and answering each other's questions. Thank you. One last thing before I forget. Let's take a look at some common mistakes. Some common mistakes are using the third person singular form of the verb with S 2 times. Another common mistake is forgetting do support. And a third mistake is forgetting a subject. Let's look at each of those. Sometimes people accidentally use S 2 times at the end of the verb because they think that the subject is he, she, it, so they need to include an S. But here we have an S on does and we have an S on talks, but we can only have the third person singular form of S at the end of the verb. This subject-verb agreement, we can only have it once. So we want to keep that subject-verb agreement on the does. What two zones does Bresenio talk about? Make sure that your main verb is in the base form. Let's look at the next mistake, forgetting do support. What he wants to get better at. This is a mistake I see very often. And I really want you to think about every time you ask a question, if you're using a verb that's not the verb be, you must include do, does, or did. So how would you fix this mistake? What does he want to get better at? Again, notice that the main verb want we use in the base form. And finally, let's look at the last mistake. Forgetting a subject. Is bad to make mistakes? I often see students asking a question like this, is bad to make mistakes? But we need a subject. The subject here is it. In a sentence, it would be, it is bad to make mistakes, or it is not bad to make mistakes. So the question is bad to make mistakes? How can we correct that? Is it bad to make mistakes? And my quick answer to that is no. Because as we have seen in Eduardo Briseño's video, making mistakes is an important process and part of the learning zone that we must go through in order to learn. So it's important to make mistakes, get feedback, apply the feedback, learn how to correct your mistakes, and complete that cycle in the learning zone so that when it's time to perform, you can minimize your errors and do the best that you can. Thank you.